guys, and welcome to 3-Point Range. I'll be introducing the 3 points today. Point 1, Shelby tells us who should take the blame for the Ravens' loss to the Bills.
Shelby, before you actually launch into that first point, we should explain that the podcast has been trending younger, which is you're the perfect example of that.
This is true.
Adding you as the host has brought down our median age significantly. And in fact, 60% of our current staff is now actually in college, which I'm very proud of. And our marketing staff has encouraged us to trend even younger, so we are mining the grade school demographic today. And that's why Rose is here with us. Shout out to all of Rose's classmates listening. And by the way, in the U.S. alone, I looked this up, a potential new 3-Point Range listener is born every 8 seconds. So we added another one while I was just sharing that fact.
That's
How
awesome.
about that? So, the stage now is yours.
Yes. All right. Well, with that lovely intro, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. And my thoughts here will revolve around the Ravens-Bills game that we all watched last night. And a lot of blame going around. Okay, we're playing the blame game. Ravens really seem to beat themselves. I mean, I think the team was their own worst enemy with turnovers, particularly in the form of fumbles. You had Andrews fumble late in the game after a catch that could have moved the chains. That just felt like a just backbreaker. Ended up extending Buffalo's lead, and then Jackson, Lamar Jackson, that being, had his first half fumble on the sack. It directly led to a touchdown for Buffalo. But I think the one that is really taking the cake is Andrews' drop, particularly the crucial 2-point conversion attempt in the game's dying moments. And it really just made the loss feel like a culmination of mistakes, really uncharacteristic errors, especially for someone like Andrews, who had just four drops all season, right? And I don't think he had fumbled since maybe it was like 2019. That was the stat that was kind of going around. A lot of mental errors and lapses, just poor execution in key moments. But I'm not going to place the blame on, Andrews or Jackson. I'm placing it on the weather. That's right. The cold weather factor and the physical impact of the cold, guys. Those freezing temperatures, slick conditions, I think it played a massive role. And as the game progressed, those icy conditions became harder and harder to ignore. Players, particularly the Ravens, obviously, not being used to that environment, struggled to maintain footing, grip the ball, perform basic tasks like catching or holding onto the ball. I mean, again, and I'm not trying to be rude, but the Mark Andrews catch there, had you thrown out the weather as a factor, I mean, that is a catch that you make like 999 times out of 1,000. But I think then throw in the factor of the weather, right? As the great Sally Jenkins described in the Washington Post, she said, try running in a sleet storm with a wind chill below zero, have someone pitch a frozen fish at you while reeling backwards in cleats and falling on your butts. That is what Andrews did. And it made me wonder. I know that obviously this is the way that these seedings work out, and the home team advantage and everything. It's something that is earned, but do we think that it is fair for cold weather, just unbearable conditions like this, to potentially, throw a wrench in what was, marked up to be this, MVP potential quarterback versus other MVP potential quarterback, and it really just became a game of inches? I don't know. So guys, I'm throwing it to y'all. Are we fine with playing these games with crazy big implications like this, in January in horrid conditions? Or are you ready to, like me, back the effort to hashtag put a dome on it? Thank you.
Kimball, I will defer to you because I was doing painstaking research for my own point yesterday and did not watch the game, so surely you will have better insight than I will.
You didn't watch the game?
That's
well,
crazy.
Let me say a couple things here. So I think one of the great things about football is it almost never defers to the weather. It's very rare that for some reason they delay or cancel a game because of weather. And I think that's part of what the battle is. And I think football coaches know that going in. So if you want to just have a all finesse or pass happy offense, go for it. And then the other thing you have to remember is teams pick their home stadium. They over time say, hey, we want to play here. Buffalo says, hey, we don't have a dome and we like it and we earned home field advantage, so come play in our place. And it's not like Baltimore plays in a dome or on turf. Um, so I don't quite buy that. And I also, does Andrews catch that ball 999 out of 1,000, and then the bad weather maybe he catches it 995 times out of 1,000. It
Mm,
was still a very easy catch, and I did not see a lot of drops. I saw guys making tough catches and playing football.
yeah. Guys
You
punching the
know,
ball out, things like
it
that.
did
Yeah.
not seem like an outrageous game where like, oh my God, nobody. And hey, guess what? Buffalo did not lose the football one time. Buffalo committed one penalty. So while Buffalo, one of the great things about that game for them was they played basically a mistake-free game, and that's how they got the win by being, even though they got outgained by a significant amount. So I don't know, Shelby. I think I'm going to have to disagree on this one. Now, look, if I had to
Mm.
go to these games, if I was a Buffalo season ticket holder, and I was like, oh my God, the biggest game of my life, and I'm going to be miserable for it through it, maybe I'd uh, agree with you. But I just think it's part of football, and it has been. I will say one thing actually. We're obviously playing later and later into the winter where it's more and more likely that the weather is going to be a factor. But
Mhm. Mhm.
again, it's always been part of the game.
I think you sign up to do that when you move to Buffalo and become a part of the Bills Mafia, don't you? I mean, isn't that
Yeah, right?
part of the
Yeah,
deal?
yeah.
To me,
But to subject others to this, it's
subject
cruel.
others like what others?
The other teams that gotta play there,
Oh,
man.
well, that's what makes the regular season valid
Right.
in the
Yes.
NFL, right?
Mm.
You know what you're
Mhm.
getting yourself into if you finish behind the Buffalo Bills in the standings in the regular season. You have a very good chance of going to Buffalo, but you have a chance to avoid it. Win all your
Win.
games.
Yeah. There you go.
Win all
There
your
you go.
games. You're not going to Buffalo. Win all your games. You're not going to Kansas City. If any team in the AFC had won all their games, they wouldn't be playing at either place. And I think that's what makes the regular season fun. That's what makes
Mm.
every game matter. And if I'm Buffalo, hell no, I'm not putting a dome on my stadium because yeah, it's miserable and that's an advantage.
That's what they like.
Why
Yeah.
would you not want to have an advantage? A home field advantage is just that. If you put that in a dome, it's it's still somewhat of a home field advantage. I mean, you've got your home fans, but you don't have that that miserable atmosphere, that miserable weather that you're used to, and they're not. And and I don't think any franchise does themselves a favor by decreasing their home field advantage in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah, while I didn't see the game and I can't comment specifically on how it played out, I can certainly say that I am a big believer in places that have distinct home field advantages because of the weather, taking full advantage of it.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, and I think you guys bring up some valid criticism, and kind of the, I guess, take that I'm sensing is that adds to the excitement and the, I guess, how much the regular season matters is that it will then dictate this home field advantage, which is obviously a really big deal when it comes to, a team like the Bills, or I would say like anywhere New England, the Giants, Steelers, even things like that. And for anybody that wants to push back, I did my research, I did my homework, and these cold weather teams, okay, that being, I'm gonna define that as home stadiums, that are, I would say, outdoor environment, not a dome. okay, above like 39 degrees north latitude, okay, they have a statistically significant advantage. Okay,
The 39th parallel is what you're telling us?
that's
Yes.
what I'm saying. Yes. Okay. And these teams, like, and I mean, I kind of got into my statistics bag, my p value, things like that, but it is true, and I'm not even gonna go into the math right now because I don't want to, and also I
Hey,
can't.
I
I
want to hear
barely
the stat. I want to hear the stat. Now you set it up.
Right.
How are these cold weather
Yeah,
teams
what's
doing?
the stat?
just
Especially if you're arguing for us.
it is just the fact that it is a like statistically significant advantage in terms of those teams over all other NFL teams during December, January, and February. That's the stat is just statistical significance.
So you did the research and you are saying that
Withholding
we
it.
are absolutely right.
I'm saying that it just depends on like what way you look at it. Like there is a clear and inherent advantage. So either you're one of those people that, for y'all's ends, hey, well, tough, and that's part of the excitement, and you play well to earn that home field advantage. On the other end, you could maybe argue that
It's
is
not a
too
fun,
big of an
competitive
advantage.
game.
Yes, exactly.
Do you not see
That was
any
a pretty
fun?
competitive game.
Yeah, that was last night. Apparently, I didn't see it, but it looked like it came down to toward the end.
Oh, it was a great game.
Do you see no fun in a snow game? No fun in watching a snow game.
I see a little bit. But I also think that, I don't know, when the weather to a certain extent impacts the way that teams can play and is then hindering the athletic ability of these great players, sometimes that's frustrating. Sometimes that's not fun. And I will say, this is where, caveat, guys, I was pulling for the Ravens. I was pulling for Lamar Jackson. So I'm just saying there's a bias factor here. But I'm like,
grapes.
but I'm like, if you are, I'm sorry, if you're Lamar, and I mean, you just took like a minute 56 seconds to move the Ravens 88 yards. Okay, you have the like 24-yard touchdown pass to Isaiah Likely. You're back in this game. Let's go. The momentum, we'll get to that later, is on your side. And then you hit your, sure-handed, or whatever they call him, like tight end, Mark Andrews, and he can't grip the ball. I mean, and again, I don't think that's something that, if you handed it to him, it wouldn't have been easier.
So the guy that caught the ball 30 seconds earlier was able to catch a 24-yarder, but Andrews couldn't catch that. The Buffalo Bills did not drop a single ball and fumble once, but Lamar fumbled and Andrews fumbled. I don't know.
Well, who's more used to playing in that environment, though?
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson's from Florida. That's a Florida boy.
Suck it up.
Right.
As
That's a
Tim
Florida
said,
boy.
Right.
home field
That's
advantage.
it. And
Yeah.
that's all the more reason why
That ain't
finish
right.
undefeated.
That ain't
Because
right.
your boy your Florida boy is not gonna want to go to Buffalo. Heck no. I get it. I agree. I wouldn't want to play there either. I would not want to play in Buffalo ever. I think it's miserable.
Way to avoid that.
But there is a way to avoid it.
Fair.
All right. I think we're ready to move on to point 2.
We'll move on. Point 1 is just me being bitter.
Point 2. Kimball has a bold NFL prediction.
All right. Yeah, let's get into point 2. Go ahead, Kimball.
All right, Shelby, it's funny you should say that, that your point was just about you being bitter. Well, probably 90% of my points in the history of three-point range about me being bitter.
Totally. Talking about, I mean, you could just put sour grapes next to almost everything he's ever said on this pod.
Jets, Belichick, Brady, UNC basketball. But today, my point is not about bitterness. I know, even though I will be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, and I know Twitter world and so many people out there are so bitter. Um, I have nothing against the Chiefs. I kind of like the Chiefs. I like Mahomes. I like Reid. I have nothing against their dynasty. But I am here to tell you, there is no way they are winning a third straight Super Bowl. There is no
None?
way they're going to win it this year. Nope. And I know it seems like it. I know that the path is pretty good because, Buffalo will have to come play in Kansas City and lose their home field advantage. And then we all know the Detroit Lions went down this weekend, and they were probably one of the most biggest obstacles in front of them. But I kind of trust in the math. And I want to ask you guys, how many teams in the 57 years of the Super Bowl, how many of the 57 Super Bowl champs had a worse point differential in the regular season than the Kansas City Chiefs did this year? You want to take a guess? I'm playing professor, quizmaster, general.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those 57 champions had a worse point differential in the regular season than did Kansas City this year?
5.
I'll say less than that just because of the way you're posing the question. 2.
All right. Well, you're in the ballpark. It's 4.
Mm-hmm.
4, which I will present my statistics. I will not hide them. I will not tease you with them and then say I'm not going to tell you. 4, which is about 7%, which is not very high. Now I'm saying it's going to be 0% because the other statistic is no team has ever won 3 straight Super Bowls, but it's just not happening. It's so hard to be a team that keeps pulling it out at the end, as Kansas City has done all year. And again, and, people talk about the refs, whatever. I'm not even talking about that. I'm not even against Kansas City. I just think there's just no way it can happen again. The 1980 Raiders outscored their opponents by 58. The 2007 Giants by 22. The 2011 Giants were the one team that actually didn't outscore their opponents, -6, and the 2012 Ravens, 54. Well, Denver was 59. Kansas City was 59 this year. In 2015, Denver was 59 as well. So they matched that. And I just think it's so hard. And I do believe that point differential is a very reliable statistic for how dominant a team is, how reliable they can be looking forward to their next game. I will throw in this one caveat, Shelby style.
Yep.
That if you guys want to push back at me and say, well, this Kansas City team is special, yes, they are. Mahomes, Reid, all that. And they are so special that, in fact, in their win over the Texans, all right, it was a miraculous win in that the Texans became the first team to outgame their opponent by 100 yards and not turn the ball over and still lose. Every other team was 49-0 in that situation. So Kansas City's already proven they can do the so-called impossible. All right, go ahead. Are you on Kansas City or are you off it? What do you think?
Well, here's why Kansas City's going to win.
All right.
Because first of all, shout out to our former 3-point range colleague, Mike Berardino. I don't miss Mike very much, but I miss him right now because he would take us down the craziest wagering rabbit hole of all time on this one for sure.
To what?
Well, just about betting against Kansas City.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because he loves his betting. But if you're betting against Mahomes, you're betting against Tom Brady. If you're betting against Mahomes, you're betting against Nick Saban. If you're betting against Mahomes, you're basically betting against the Harlem Globetrotters. Because we know what that's like. We of all people know what that's like. I mean, that gets back to the perception of ACC fans around here that you're betting against Coach K. Basically, it just seems like, and I realize this is a perception, but it seems like to the ACC world, when Coach K was coaching, that they always got the calls when they needed to get the calls. Whether it was true or not, you can decide for yourself, but he certainly won a lot of games. I heard some stat recently about how the Chiefs have had more TDs called back for penalty
That's crazy.
than just about any other team. And I say, yada, yada, yada. Was that roughing the passer against the Texans? I don't think so.
No.
It sure, just sure feels to me like the Chiefs get the calls when they need them. And, whether that's perception or reality, that's one of the ways that championship teams survive. KC's clearly, they're not as dominant as they've been in the past season. You've just given us the perfect research for that. But I just keep asking myself, who's going to take them out? I think Josh Allen in the playoffs against Mahomes has been everybody else in the ACC against Coach K. And I just don't see any way Eagles or Commanders win the Super Bowl. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they're playing for the true NFC East championship and nothing more. So if the Chiefs reach the Super Bowl, in my mind, and I believe they will, then I think we're going to see a threepeat.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, just betting against Mahomes is like betting against, greatness itself. And I get the idea of like pointing to the point differential. If I'm correct, what the Chiefs had, it was a point differential about like 59 points this season. That's pretty tight and narrow, but also another way that you can look at it on the flip side is that the Chiefs, Kansas City, they have an impressive ability to close out games, come through in the clutch. They're battle tested. Like, you can kind of flip that on its head in a sense. I think also the thing that I would look to is, for me, offensive reliance on like big plays versus just the check down ability, if that makes sense. And can Mahomes continue to extend plays, create something out of nothing? And I think if some of those bigger plays don't connect, the Chiefs may struggle to sustain drives, especially because I think that the run game hasn't been as dominant or consistent this season. But that being said, I mean, I think that, again, just Mahomes has been so dominant, and there's a reason for that. And I think that this idea of, oh, well, like, it hasn't been done before, like, it doesn't really apply to a case like Mahomes, a case like the Chiefs. I don't know. I mean, I think there's still a very good reason why, they're Vegas favorites by a really good margin. And sure, you're going to have some really tight games, some really close games throughout the season. But I think the Chiefs' record really speaks for itself, as well as just Mahomes' general dominance and the point differential of the Chiefs in terms of postseason play, particularly.
I mean, let's just spell it out. All right, Kimball, if when you sit down to watch the Bills and the Chiefs next week, you really think the Bills are going to win?
I do.
You do?
I do. I think it's time. I think it's their time. But I should say that I did a little research myself, and I have a statistic for you. It's the Harlem Globetrotters point differential over that. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. But it's pretty amazing.
I would imagine. Although the Generals kept it close in a lot of those games, that helps. That helps the drama. You don't want to just blowouts are no fun. You got to keep the crowd interested. So yeah, I mean, I believe me, I know very well. I've watched my share of Harlem Globetrotters games. I know. It's always a nail biter, but somehow, some way, they always come through, just like Coach K and just like the Kansas City Chiefs.
So Coach K, what did he win? 40 national championships in his career?
Yeah, there were. You can say if you want. I know where you're going with this, that they didn't win the national championship every year, and it's true. It feels like, I mean, I made the point based on the ACC, because that's really where the perception, I think, lies, is that in ACC games, it seemed like every time you thought they were out, they just came out of nowhere, and sometimes it looked like it had something to do with the referees. The NCAA tournament was a different thing. We all know that, and I mean, obviously they won their share, but you didn't feel like I didn't have that, just personally didn't have that same feeling once they got into the ACC tournament that they were always going to find a way, and maybe they would get help from the stripes. But I think that there's a fair amount of people who thought that in the ACC.
Let's get to the big one.
I'm ready.
All right.
Point 3. Tim gives this podcast some momentum.
Point 3, and this is one that has been, it's been brewing now for the better part of a week. And I told Shelby before the podcast, Kimmel, that we'll just lay this out. I'm going to lay out my feelings on the matter, and then I know you are going to give the counterpoint, and we'll let Shelby decide who she thinks. Well, no doubt she'll agree with me, but we'll lay it out for her and let her make that final call. So first of all, another shout out to the boys in 20 Gerald at Boston College, particularly Jasek Finn, Kyle, and my son Atticus, who over pizza last weekend helped me formulate the ironclad argument I'm about to make.
Oh.
Listen to any sports broadcast, and you're going to hear the word come up eventually: momentum. And it is an interesting concept. Is it true? Is it real? Or is it just a broadcasters and fans
Like
placebo?
an ism. Yeah.
So my research shows that, as I've looked into the topic, that many a grad student thesis has tackled this question, and most of the research is very clinical. It doesn't. It's like, okay, well, a guy makes a 3-point shot. Does that mean he's more likely to make the next 3-point shot? And those sort of theses will tell you that no, it makes no difference. And I think that's what my esteemed colleague is about to argue. But I believe that discounts that there is an emotional element to sports. It's played by people who are ruled by both hubris and doubt. And so if you just break it down into, a sort of a coin flip kind of thing, yeah, I don't believe there's any momentum in flipping a coin. But I do believe when you add the human element, you add the emotional element. And this is why I missed the game yesterday, because I discussed the issue at length with our intro girl, Rose's sister, Julia, at her volleyball tournament yesterday in Raleigh that I watched. And you can't help but see, when she said there were times in her games when her team would basically get this collective adrenaline rush when things were going well, and their collective confidence rises, and she believes that they are more likely to win that point. Conversely, there are stretches when a mistake is made and it compounds to a losing stretch of points because this concept of doubt has entered their minds. And I watched it happen repeatedly over and over yesterday. And volleyball is such an interesting sport. Did you play volleyball in high school?
Mm-mm.
I know you played many sports, but
yep.
I guess that wasn't one of them.
I was a manager briefly here at UNC.
Oh, really?
I have a lot of friends that played, yeah.
Yeah, well, to me, what's interesting about volleyball and what makes it such an interesting case study is because volleyball is one of the few sports that's make it, take it. I mean, football, you score, then the other team gets the ball. Basketball, you score, the other team gets the ball. Hockey, you score, at least there's a face-off. See who gets the ball. Or lacrosse, you score, there's a face-off. But volleyball, it's always make it, take it. Mm-hmm. You can keep serving forever. And they might never get to serve again. And to me, that's what makes, that's what turns it into a great case for momentum in sports. As I was watching these games yesterday, and yeah, there'd be a serve and it would be an ace, and then all of a sudden the other team was a little bit scattered, and there'd be another serve, and they just seem to lose their confidence. And I know Kimmel's going to argue that, well, why doesn't it just keep going forever? And there's a valid point to that. But Often in volleyball, the way that they stop this momentum is that they call a timeout. They have 2 timeouts per set, and that's they use them almost all the time in volleyball because as soon as the team scores 4 or 5 points, they say, "All right, let's do this. Let's call timeout. Let's see whether we can change the momentum." And I've experienced it myself in playing tennis as a kid. There were times when I would just get a few points in a row, and all of a sudden I was just invincible. I
Mm-hmm.
had this level of confidence that I did not have the rest of the match. And then there were other times when I didn't think I was ever going to win another point, and I just felt like I'm just spiraling. And I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I really do. I just think, and obviously it doesn't work constantly, but I do think that there's this self-fulfilling prophecy that says, all right, I think I'm going to win the next point. I think I'm more likely to win the next point.
Mm.
Or I'm doubting myself. I don't think I'm going to win the next point, and often I'm not going to win the next point. And maybe there might be a run of 2, 3, 4, 5 points. And in tennis, you just lose the game. In some sports, you call timeout. So, so anticipating your argument, Kimball, I'm going to ask you, do you, as a coach, and we all know you're a middle school basketball coach and have been a varsity coach and other coach, do you ever call a timeout when your team is struggling?
Often, but it is not to change the momentum. It's
But
to
if
change what we're doing, to make an adjustment,
mm-hmm.
to address something that we're not doing right. That will change the course of events, hopefully. And then you fans will think the momentum changed. But in fact, it's like, what we did? We boxed out. We finally boxed out. We finally got up and jumped that screen instead of sitting back. And you all, as an observable phenomenon, said, "Oh, they changed momentum." I didn't say, "Hey, boys, let's change the momentum here. The timeout just did it, probably. We'll just do it." Now, look, I will. Confidence exists.
Mm-hmm.
Momentum does not. And I already had that in my notes preparing for this argument that I do believe in confidence, but confidence is not all powerful. And and as you point out, like you can have confidence in tennis for 4 or 5 points, and then where did it go? Where did your momentum go? If it existed, it would be continuous. Because what would change it? It would only just keep thriving and building on itself. And so I think it is a phenomenon we observe, and we see changes. I'll bring up a couple examples. First of all, I have played volleyball, and what's interesting about volleyball is it's the most. I used to think basketball was the ultimate chemistry sport where the 5 people on the court have to kind of really be vibing together. And then I played volleyball, and
Mm-hmm.
it's even bigger because there's so many little, baseball is like your turn to hit, your turn to throw it, your turn to do this. Even football, it's like your job is to block, my job is to run. But volleyball, there's so many iffy plays like, no, 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 that was my ball. No, 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 that was yours. And you got to communicate and talk. And it's so many gray areas that a team can really get down on itself. But again, a lot of that timeout is probably saying like, hey, 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 remember, she's the setter. This is your job. That's your ball to get. That's your ball to dig out. Things like that. So things like that happen. There, let's go back to Baltimore and Buffalo. What an amazing example. Um, oh, I'm sorry. When Mark Andrews fumbled, it looked lost. The game was over. It was like you're driving. Andrews fumbled. Another turnover. Oh, Baltimore keeps beating itself. No, no, no. It's not over. Baltimore came down and scored. Oh, they scored. They were about to tie the game. Couldn't the momentum could not have been more in their favor? They just came back, 2 minute drive, 88 yards, got the ball. Now it's a 2 point conversion. They throw the pass. Oh, momentum goes away. Andrew stops the ball. It's not it's a perception. It's not reality. And again, now confidence is interesting. A lot of times, what you do in basketball or in any sport, and even in tennis, I'm sure you got your confidence back somehow. You said like, all right, let me work on let me get to my backhand quicker. I'm a little late to that, and that's why I'm missing my backhand. That's why I lost that last point, or I got to stop coming to the net. Every time I come to the net, the guy hits it by me. And that changes. And now you say, oh yeah, now all I have to do is stay back and hit it to his backhand. I'll be fine. These are all these elements come into play. And those are so much more real and definable than momentum, which is perception.
So you don't think when you call a timeout that your players are suffering from a crisis of confidence?
No, they are no, and confidence is a real thing. And part of the timeout is say like, hey guys, we can do this. I know it looks bleak right now. They should have 10 points in a row, but you know what? 6 of those points were because we didn't box out. 4 of those points is because we threw the ball away and gave them live ball turnover and transition basket. Let's really focus on not turning the ball over like we've worked on. Let's focus on boxing out, and guess what? Things will start going better our way. And sometimes just look, it's not so much the momentum changing on timeout, even if you say nothing or whatever. It's just they stop and they breathe and they collect themselves, and internally they probably say, oh man, I got to stop just firing up the first shot I get. Like I got to take my time, or I got to set my feet when I shoot. There's a million little things going through everybody's head like that. And yeah, sometimes a timeout can just refocus what we're trying to do. But you're not just saying like, hey, this break will all of a sudden magically turn things around, because there's so many games. If timeouts changed a game, then the first team that called timeout would win, as long as the next team never called another timeout. And game swing, I'd like to study. I want to see your study on.
They do go back and forth with timeouts in a game. When one team's struggling, they call timeout, and then the other team's struggling, they call timeout because
and a lot of times the team's struggling, they call timeout, and then they keep getting their ass kicked because they're worse than the other team. I'd love to see the study on timeouts because yeah, we call timeout to try and turn it, but then often it doesn't happen. I mean, we just did that. To try and change what's happening in the game, to
change what about the game?
Do it better so we score and stop them from scoring. Whether it's turn it like stop not boxing out, like stop not denying your man.
What's it?
Yeah, what's it?
To turn the tide of the game.
The tide? The tide?
I think tide is part of the definition of momentum.
No, but it's
turn the tide.
Turn the results, to change the results, to change what's happening, and that's what makes it matter. Shelby, you must know that when you play a sport, you know why you give up a basket in basketball. You know why you score. And it's not magic. It's not momentum. It's because you finally said, set a better screen. Set a better screen, and you'll come off the screen and you'll hit your shot. And that's what really happens. And that's what I'm saying. You have to change those things. And yeah, sometimes you have to say, like, talk to your kids and say, like, hey, remember how we worked on this in practice and how we can do this? We can do this. Stick to it. Trust what we're doing. It will work. I mean, there's a lot of touchy-feely things, but I don't think it's about like, hey, guys, we'll be good now because I just called timeout and we changed momentum, so go get them.
You don't think there's anything to when a crowd's going absolutely bonkers?
If it were true, like, think of the BC game. And it was funny because I was corresponding with your boys. I saw them before the game, your Atticus and his roommates, and we talked about it. And as I said, like, all you got to do tonight to beat Duke is win the tip. You win the tip, you got the momentum. Wow, if you win the tip and score, you really got the momentum because then you're rolling. And sure enough, BC won the tip. They got the first basket. They led early part of the game. They had all the momentum. But, oh, wait, they didn't. You have it until you don't, and it's kind of indefinable why. Again, pointing to the Baltimore example, like Baltimore has great momentum until Andrews fumbles. Oh, now they're screwed. Oh, no, they got it back. Oh, now they scored. Oh, now they have all the momentum until Andrews drops the pass. It doesn't exist.
All right, we'll open it up to Shelby. What do you got? What do you think?
Unless you have the right environment and it's warm and nice outside.
Hey, calm down.
Remember,
Florida
you said
boy.
That when you make your decision.
Hey, free athlete. But yeah, I think it's tricky. And I think what I am tempted to believe is that I think momentum, obviously, like it is a concept in terms of sports. I don't think it is a real thing, but it feels real, and that is important.
Yep,
okay?
Agreed.
So I think it's more likely an effect of like growing confidence, emotional shifts, psychological factors, like a team goes on a streak, a player hits multiple successful shots, and I mean, it's not because of some external force, like because of momentum, but again, those kind of like internal psychological factors like belief, focus, collective confidence, things like that. And I like to use like, I would think about maybe the anecdotes of baseball, and let's just take a like a Billy Bean, for instance. So I'm a little bit inspired. I've been reading, I actually brought it with me, hold up, but Moneyball, the book Moneyball. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I've been tapping in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most interesting things I think early on in the book was, it was talking about the struggles of, you know, Billy Bean. Obviously we all know him now for, you know, the work that he did with Oakland A's, etc., and just what he was able to do in terms of like front office management. But as a prospect, he was a really talented up and coming guy, somebody that had all the, you know, 5 tools, so to speak. But what he really described as his own personal weakness was his ability to hit. And so much of that was the mental and psychological approach of hitting. And he just couldn't accept failure. He would have these games where, you know, maybe he cranks like a triple first at bat and then he's rolling, right? Whereas
All
if
the momentum was on his side. He should have been an all-star after
right,
that.
right. Or if he had, you know, let's say like he started the game with 2 strikeouts, he was doomed. And now I don't think
Right.
that's
Crisis
any
of confidence.
crisis of confidence.
Yeah.
But I don't see that necessarily as like a momentum thing, but as individual at bats where, because he was just mentally like not like fit for the game of for the game of baseball rather, like that was kind of his downfall, if that makes sense. I think one of the interesting things that I was able to find, I was just kind of looking up like coaches and players quotes about momentum, and I thought that Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts, he had a really interesting quote, which is that momentum is the fakest thing out there because it can end and begin at any moment. You think about examples like, you know, 2017 Super Bowl and things like that. I don't know. I think it's kind of tricky because I think we're inherently discussing a super intangible thing. I think the feel of momentum, and when you're going on a stretch and the crowd's roaring, like that feels very real. But I think realistically, kind of like you were saying, Scott, when you look at the X's and O's, there are like very real, tangible ways that you can explain it. That being said, though, when you call a timeout, I think inherently part of it is to turn it being the tide, it being the momentum. And I think that's the kind of like the psyche of an athlete. Like you can be swayed by that feeling, that sense of momentum. And that's definitely worth something, even if it as a concept is a little bit, you know, imagined.
So I think me and the boys at 20 Gerald, we can chalk that up as a victory.
She did not say that.
That's the way I'm perceiving it. I feel like the momentum was definitely in our favor.
Let's see if she gives us a which she chooses, yes or no, win or loss.
Yes or no? I guess
mentor, the professor who probably still manages your career, or just some unknown guy up in Rhode Island.
Okay, so the argument is just, is momentum real? Is that like the question?
It's Tim's point. I'll let him pose the question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, is momentum real? But even I will say that I'm talking about this crisis of confidence. That's what I. Yes. No, that's those are. That's
I think
it's
the same thing.
It's the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
It is the same thing. It's yes. When you're calling a timeout, you're saying my guys have lost their confidence. I need to
You're also
fix that.
saying my guys forgot the game plan and are not set up
Not
right
necessarily,
on offense.
because a lot of times coaches come out and do the same thing. They don't change anything. They just try to stop the crowd from cheering.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes.
Right.
Here's what I will say, and I'm not trying to like get controversial when I say this, but I think in the same sense that like an atheist can recognize that religion is real because of the way that it moves people, I would similarly argue that momentum is a real thing in the sense that if it impacts human behavior, if it impacts confidence, collective energy, like if people are buying into it, then yes.
Bingo. Done.
I'm
Done.
sorry. I'm sorry.
And I know how religious the professor is.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's about how it moves people.
We got that one 20 drilled. We got it.
I'll
All
see
right.
you all in church next Sunday, boys.
Yeah. You guys are right there in the same area. You can all meet up. All right. I think we've somehow broken that down as much as it can be broken, and it really is broken. I think. Thank you to my dear friend Rose for boosting our numbers with the young crowd. She's actually will appear one more time on the podcast. You're about to find out it's an Easter egg. Alas, she probably won't be joining us on any future pods because she needs to get back to her real job of acing the 3rd grade. Also, thanks to our incredibly brilliant and remarkably patient producer, Sarah Ellis, for putting up with all of my shenanigans, and on a holiday, no less. Thank you, Sarah. And so for the scout, Kimball Crossley, and the prospect, Shelby Swanson, I'm the professor, Tim Crothers, pulling up for a momentum-changing 3 and